Whee! There we go. That should keep burning until it gets to a nice little coal bed, and then I can knock it down a little bit and build up my little furnace around it. It's not that usual for us to get a train this early. Kinda neat. God damn it. My name, it means nothing. My age even less. The place that I come from. That's a little too high. A little too high, a little too high. My name, it ain't nothing. My age, it means less. The place that I come from is called the Midwest. I was born and I was raised there and taught all my life that the place that I come from has God on its side. What's up, what's up, what's up? What it do, how it do, where it do. What's going on, everybody? Come on, you people, wherever you roam, and accept that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If the time that you've got is worth saving, well, you'd better swim fast or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changin'. Are you wearing a women's top? Yes, on account of me being a woman, I do typically wear women's tops, yeah. Indeed. Sometimes I'll go for something a little more gender neutral, I guess, but yeah, like I would normally say, yes, I'm typically in a women's top. Can somebody fucking get rid of this weird motherfucker spamming a bunch of weird shit? Jesus Christ. Oh boy, chat is cancerous sometimes. Anyway, what's up, everybody? Make sure you guys hit that like button as you start to roll in. It really does help the channel. Every single time you hit that like button is another chance to send the stream out to even more people, which increases the quality of your viewing pleasure by increasing the number of people who can engage in the chat. And also, pimping that same thing, if you want to make sure your comment or question gets read, consider sending a super chat. I do read every single one, as long as it doesn't violate TOS. That's the big thing. Hey, dude, what's your name? Phoebe. It's right there on the channel. It's right there. Literally right there. Or up there, actually. I think it's up there now. Why lace? I don't know. This shirt was given to me, and I just really like it. I think it's cute. I don't have any, like, particular affection for lace in particular. You're not Phoebe, you're Phil. I love how everyone on Earth that is, like, a hardcore transphobe, like, a transphobe? But I love how all hardcore transphobes seem to have this, like, illusion in their head that every single trans person picks a name that relates somehow to their old name. I'm sorry, but you have a complete misapprehension about what being trans is and what the life of someone who is trans is like. My dead name is not Phil. Not even the same letter, bro. Bring back Insane Asylum? I agree, and start throwing every Charlie Kirk fan in there. Start throwing every fucking MAGA person in there. Every, like, hardcore Charlie Kirk fan. All of these people on the right wing, they're, like, pretending that they fucking liked him. Tell you what, the actual Charlie Kirk fans, if you've mentioned Kirk, like, if you've mentioned Charlie in your Twitter at some point in the last 2 years, you know, okay, you get to do it, as long as it was before Wednesday. But if it wasn't, I'm sorry, you don't get to do that. You know, and I think we should start sending those people into some insane asylums so that they can be removed from the rest of society, so that we don't have to deal with their pearl-clutching stupid bullshit. Every single time some big event happens, each and every one of these people want to capitalize on it and use it as an opportunity to deprive people like me and people like you of our fucking human rights. So let's start throwing those motherfuckers in an asylum. Let's start locking them up. And the funny thing is, I wouldn't say this type of shit, but when you say that to me, what else is my response? Like, what should be my, like, what is the ideal response to that in your mind? So what, me being trans, which is something that's backed up by literally every bit of available medical evidence that we have, the vast preponderance of people who study the topic say that, yeah, like, allowing trans people to come out and be trans and accepting them leads to better outcomes for trans people than rejecting that or pretending that it doesn't exist or pretending like gender is this hard, strict binary thing. What rights have you lost? The right to change my gender marker on a passport, for one. But, in case you didn't hear, and since it's in the title anyway, the FBI is currently discussing categorizing transgender people as part of their new designation of terrorist, basically, which is nihilistic, violent something, nihilistic violent extremist, I think. Yeah, so they're considering basically looping an entire group of people who are united in literally one thing, and that is living as a different gender than we were born as, or a gender other than the gender that corresponds with the sex we were born at birth, right? Assigned at birth. That is a giant fucking escalation. It's gone now from rhetoric to, oh, we just don't want it infecting the minds of our kids, or whatever the fuck. It's gone from save the children to now save the adults, lock the adults up. So now you can't. You realize what a fucking direct attack this is on the First Amendment? This is basically the FBI trying to figure out some way to deny Americans our civil rights, which were fought for by literally millions of people over the years. Millions of people have given their lives, or 20 years of it, in the service of the protection of the United States Constitution. And there are people right now actively trying to destroy that work. And it's not the left. Nobody. Nope. It's the right. The purveyors of every fucked up, nightmarish proposal you've ever heard. That's right. The good old right wing. Alrighty, now I just gotta grab my straw. Alrighty. That should have us set for a minute. Okay, let's see. We got a super chat. Love you, Phoebe. Aw, thank you for that. I appreciate the $5 and the free-floating love. What a sweet and kind thing. If anybody else wants to have their question, comment, etc. read, please consider sending a super chat. Or you can just send some free-floating love like that. You don't have to ask a question or have a commentary, but it's a great way to let me know that you like what we're doing over here, trying to encourage conversations about difficult topics with people that disagree hard and heavily. Excuse me. It's all about attention and rejection. Is that your theory? Is that it's all about attention and rejection? So what about people who got plenty of attention beforehand? What about people like me? Like, pretty much as soon as I got out of high school, well, really even kind of like when I was in high school still, when I started working my first job, I started becoming way more social. And I would say 2 years after I got my first job, dude, I was an incredibly social person. I still had like a kind of like an awkwardness about me, and I would say I still have that to this day. Sometimes more than others. I mean, it really just depends on what kind of state of mind I'm in at that moment. But I never really had a problem getting attention, even when I was way more awkward and way less sociable. When I wanted attention, I got plenty of it. I mean, I started playing guitar when I was 16. Always had success being able to find some kind of audience for that. I've been telling jokes since I was a little ass kid, making people laugh since I was a little ass kid, singing since I was a little ass kid. Bro, I never had no problem with getting attention. As far as rejection goes, I got rejected way more when I was like cosplaying as a dude or whatever. Like before I came out as trans, man, I feel like the rejection used to come hot and heavy. The rejection I care about. I really don't give a fuck about the rejection of random stranger morons online. I really don't give a shit what you guys have to say. But when it comes to somebody that I really want to be friends with, or somebody that I want to be in a relationship with, or something like that, that kind of rejection does matter, at least to me. And I've experienced way less of that kind of thing since coming out as trans. Not that I'm saying there's a direct correlation. If anything, I think the correlation is because I became way more well-adjusted in the wake of being able to come out and live my life as I really am, right? So I think that that's what it's an outgrowth of, not necessarily being trans in and of itself. My kids will do sports and a hobby instead of whatever this is. So you see me streaming by a campfire at 11 at night, and you assume that my entire day must be nothing but streaming by a campfire. Is that the impression I'm supposed to get here? You also say my kids will do this, that, and the other thing instead of this, which kind of implies that I'm a child. Either you think I'm a child, or you think that kids should be doing shit that adults do. Motherfucker, I'm 27 years old. Don't treat me like a fucking baby, alright? I get that there are plenty of people that are still older than me, but at this point, I'm starting to get the picture, alright? God, I hate that condescending shit. Motherfuckers think they're better than you because their back hurts worse than yours does. Because they got wrinkles, because they got more laugh lines. It's like, motherfucker, do you think wisdom grows with laugh lines? Do you think your intelligence increases commensurate with your back pain? Shut up. Paychecks are bigger too? Oh, don't I know it. And trust me and every other millennial and Gen Zer hate your asses for it. You old cocksuckers literally refuse to leave fields that utterly need new blood because y'all have fucking convinced yourself that there's nothing to life but going into work every day. And so you're loath to retire because it's all you've ever known, and you've placed a lot of value on other people's lives with the idea of them working. And so you can't separate yourself from the idea that you've just got to work yourself into an early grave. And so there are plenty of people who could retire, they just don't want to. There are plenty of people, literally. I know so many fucking people. I know of so many people. I shouldn't say I know them personally. I wouldn't be friends with somebody like that. But, okay, here's an example of what I think retirement should look like. My grandfather was a union plumber. By the time he retired, and he retired at a reasonable age, he was making like a 6-figure salary. He was making buku bucks. Literally. Fucking insane money. He had risen up the ranks and shit. He was like, he was like the leader of an outfit when he left, like a foreman or some shit. I don't know the exact terminology. It wasn't like I was going to work with him, but he was able to retire on an incredibly good salary, or on an incredibly good retirement benefit, and having had an incredibly good salary and done a lot with it. But the problem with that is that, or the problem, not that I guess it's not really a problem, but the thing I was going to bring up that was part of that is that when my grandfather retired from the plumbers union, there was a clause in his contract as part of retirement, right, that he could not work in the plumbing industry for something like 5 years afterwards. 5 or 10 years. I don't remember exactly how long it was, but he was basically like, because I asked him one time, I was like, I was kind of young at the time. I was like 14 or 15. I was like, so God, I feel so, it sounds so impertinent now thinking about it. I asked him, why don't you go to work anymore? My dumb fucking ass. And he was like, well, because I'm retired. Do you remember? And I was like, yeah. Well, wait, so how does that even work? And he was like, well, I worked for 30 years, and every time I got a paycheck, part of that was before I even got it, it would get taken out and put into a retirement account. And that built and built and built over the years, and now that is part of what I'm able to draw off of. It's money that I've been paying in for the last 30 years. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, could you go back to work if you wanted to? And he was like, no, I wouldn't want to, and the union wouldn't let me. And I was like, I had him explain that, and he just explained what I explained to you guys, is that there's just a clause in the contract. You can't do it. Non-compete. It's a non-competition clause. And I kind of agree with him, too, by the way, because it's meant to prevent this exact fucking problem. Old heads getting in the industry and never getting out of it, staying in like leeching ticks for fucking decades, doing less and less. My grandpa retired when he had given as much as he could give, and after a really fucking productive career where he was really well liked, really fucking productive, really good at his job. Perfect, right? That's a perfect career. And he hasn't fucking tried to go back to work since. I mean, there was a time when he was considering it just because, like, things at home, he was like, I'm gonna fucking get me a job as a Walmart greeter. In other words, union bad, self-employed good? Do what? Who's saying that? I ain't saying that. I'm saying union good, self-employed good, Working for another motherfucker with no contract, that shit's fucked. Don't do that if you can help it. And if you can't help it, then do your best to organize. The only reason your place of business doesn't have a union yet is because nobody's tried to make one. And if they did, they didn't try hard enough, or the company got to them or something. But it is now your opportunity. You work at a non-union shop, and you want to make it into a union shop. Well, the industrial workers of the world have a number of pamphlets that can help you out with that exact project. If if their kind of advocacy and activism is your kind of thing. And if not, there are lots of other resources too. Serious question. Have you talked to a therapist? Yes, lots of times. About the topic of me being trans or in general. I don't know what you mean, but yes, to both. To any. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different therapists over the years. I got a super chat a while back. Let me see. All the bugs are attracted to the light. That's true. Dude, all the insects in the world are drawn by a bright, shining light. That's very true. Make sure you guys hit that like button, by the way. I ain't pimped it in a while, but it really does help. Every single time you hit that like button, it's another chance to send the stream out to even more people, which increases the quality of your viewing pleasure by increasing the number of people who can engage in the chat. It really does help. So double tap your screen, or if you have an actual like button, go ahead and hit that. It really does help. I really love it. Thank you. But no, seriously. Also, send a super chat if you want to make sure that your comment or question gets read or answered. I do read every single one as long as it doesn't violate TOS. Great way to show appreciation in general, too. I don't like it, though. Well, hit the like button anyway so that you can get some people in here that hate me to argue with me. If milquetoast celebrity liberal criticism is going to be considered violence, people like you and I are fucked. That's kind of where I'm coming from, Riley, right now. That's kind of like a lot of the advocacy I've been doing lately is telling people this stuff, like this has elevated things. No, you remember, Riley, for days now, for a week now, I've been saying this is nothing to celebrate. This death is nothing to celebrate. We need to be careful about how we talk about this. I really wish people would fucking get off the fucking violent high horse. But no, it's gotten worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Literally every day, there's another news story that leads me to think things are getting worse. And it's genuinely becoming frightening because now, just having the opinions that me and you have about Charlie Kirk, Riley, makes some people think of us as potentially violent extremists now. And that's despite the fact that no such association was ever made between Timothy McVeigh and the conservative causes that he supported, or Billy Ray, what was his name? Billy Roy, what was his fucking name? What was his name? I can't remember the dude's name, but that one, the dude who killed MLK Jr. I keep wanting to say Billy Ray Earl, and I think I think I'm just making up a hillbilly sounding name. But yeah, that dude, you know? I forgot what I was saying now. Anyway. Billy Ray Cyrus, yeah, that dude. No, that was not who that's not who killed MLK Jr. That is where the world is at right now. We are no longer allowed to say anything without worrying about losing our jobs and being heavily doomed, even though we're performing our freedom of speech. No, yeah, Zero Space. And I mean, this is one of those things that the left has been making a criticism of the right, which I 100% wholeheartedly agree with, but it has a corollary, right? So people have been saying, like some people on the left have been, basically screaming about how leftists are getting their, getting fired and getting social repercussions and shit, all for saying things which are 100% protected by the First Amendment. And while I think their concerns are 100% valid, I also thought those concerns were valid back when it was conservatives. Maybe not at first. Like, honestly, when I first started getting into revolutionary leftist politics, I had some pretty cringeworthy positions. Not gonna lie. It took me a lot of conversation and a lot of introspection, really, to get to the point where I'm at now, where I would say I've got some pretty nuanced politics, if we're completely honest. But I used to have some real shitty takes, you know, and Fuck, once again, I forgot where I was going with that. Motherfucker, I'm bad at this. You were talking about fucking... Oh yeah, people losing their jobs and shit. Yeah, so back when I first started getting into revolutionary leftism and like hardcore far left leftism, I kind of agreed with some of the people who were saying, like, you know, don't be a Nazi online if you don't want to get fired from your job or whatever. But you know, as the years went by, I started to see how that kind of builds resentment. And as recently as 2 years ago, I remember having conversations with people saying, you know, that's a bad tactic. Bad tactic. Conversation is the way we cure these people. Conversation by refusing to take them seriously. Laughing them off, but, you know, laughing them off in public, but talking to them in private. You know, allowing yourself to present that other side. Allowing yourself to be a human example to the contrary of all the crazy shit that they believe. And when you do find somebody who's genuinely just in it for the grift, or they're in it for some reason that makes it impossible to get to them, then at that point you bring out the claws. But even then, I think that we need to stop with this tactic of trying to do life ruination on people for having the wrong opinion. Period. It's a fucking horrible policy. I think it's led to a lot of resentment of the left wing by the right, because it's a tactic that we were using heavily against you guys for a long time. I say we. I wasn't fucking using it against you guys. I never submitted any names to any fucking list or any shit like that, you know? But I knew people who were advocating for that kind of thing, and I used to think that they had a point. Now I kind of don't, and I haven't for the last little while. Like I said, I remember having conversations about it as recently as 2 years ago. Kind of mind changing on this, so... Phoebes, you and I are still young. Of course we had L takes recently. Yeah. It's very true, Riley. Charlie Kirk wasn't about free speech, he was about hate speech. I tend to agree. I mean, yes and no. Here's the thing. I think the world Charlie Kirk would build would be a world in which you probably would be given some kind of criminal penalty for advocating for trans people, or probably a lot of other things, honestly. Who knows how far that rabbit hole goes. And in fact, now that I think about it, I don't even know that I want to speculate, because it could be pretty spooky. I think that there would be a lot of, you know, like there's already a lot of marginalized peoples in the United States. I think there would be even more. And I think the oppression visited upon us would become a few degrees hotter. But that's not the cover he went with, and that's not the tact he took, right? I think the things that he actually advocated for, ironically, would have eventually destroyed his way of life. Because Charlie Kirk's way of life is predicated on openly arguing, or at least it was, I guess, you know, it's not now, but Charlie Kirk's way of life was predicated on arguing with people who disagreed with him. Hard arguments, vicious arguments, sometimes really contentious arguments. And that was what made him his bread and butter. That was his whole fucking shtick. That was the vast majority of his shtick anyway. The debate circuit, the college circuit, these big public appearances and shit. That was his thing. And so, to some people, he is kind of like an icon of free speech. I don't see him that way, but I do recognize that there are a lot of people who do. And that's why I say that it's an assault upon free speech. I mean, it is objectively, I think, too. Maybe not for the same reasons they would argue, but whatever, you know? I'm going to go ahead and turn on idiot mode so that I can actually read the chat and what's going on. Let's see, subscribers, message delay, 30 seconds. I'm sorry to anybody this inconveniences, but hey, just think about your message before you send it and type the whole thing in one message, and the limit won't even bother you. And there's 365 people watching. That's as many days as there are in a year. That's fucking crazy. Anyway, 365 people watching. If half of you guys hit that like button right now, we would have 180 likes like that. So please hit that like button right now. It really does help the channel, and it especially helps us stream. Why are people so filled with hate? Because the media fucking literally encourages it. You realize, like, everything around us encourages it. I kind of encourage it. I mean, I don't directly encourage it, but my existence is kind of made contentious by the media atmosphere that we've got, and I kind of participate in my own way in that by having these titles that encourage people who are interested in talking about current events and politics and news and that kind of thing, and watching content about that. I have these titles that encourage that kind of crowd to come in here because that's the kind of thing I like to talk about, but it's also kind of participating in that in a way. It's algo farming, something that I know ultimately is largely used for a kind of destructive purpose. Now, my argument is that what I'm doing is honestly pretty noble. I think my presentation makes up for the perhaps kind of ignoble nature of the craft itself, if that makes sense. Ow, ow. Did Jimmy Kimmel really deserve to be fired? No, especially not for the milquetoast shit he said, dude. I don't even remember what it was he said. That's how unnotable it was. I read it, and I thought about it for a few minutes. I was like, man, this is a nothing burger, dude. This fucking dude didn't deserve to be fired. Although, I will tell you, ratings had kind of crashed for Jimmy Kimmel. He was very, very, very much not watched in the month of August as compared to, like, even January of this year. January of this year, shit ton of people tuned in. August of this year, nobody turned, well, not nobody, but like a couple of 100,000 people versus like 1.5 million listeners. Crazy amount of decline. And I think that they probably wanted an excuse to get rid of him anyway. And you know what? It might be for the fucking better, because there's something that happens. Look at Mehdi Hassan, There's something that happens sometimes when these news figureheads become independent media figureheads, and they're suddenly let completely off the chain, and they can say whatever the fuck they really think. I mean, I think it sucks that the mainstream media makes people hide that anyway, but you look at somebody like Mehdi Hassan, started out on CNN. Well, I'm sure he started out somewhere else, but you know what I'm saying. He got famous on CNN and then ended up being this big, he founded his own independent media company. And now he's like a major figure on the kind of like left YouTube space. And he says all kinds of shit you would never hear on CNN. Does your mom miss her dress? I would never wear my mom's clothes because my mom is like a tiny, itty-bitty, skinny lady, and I am a giant fat chick. Literally, I'm like taller than my mom by 1.5 feet, and I outweigh her by 200 pounds. I couldn't fit into my mom's clothes if it would be comical. Oh my God, it would be hilarious. It would be hilarity. Utter hilarity. You're not a woman? You saying something with confidence doesn't actually make it true. I know that nobody's probably introduced you to that idea yet, but I'm here to disavow you of your notions. Riley Weston with the $2. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. ABC Late Night, where political violence starts. I know, right? Yeah, ABC Late Night, the home, the American home for open political violence advocacy in America. No, it's like, dude, you would never, ever hear some shit like that on the fucking Jimmy Kimmel show. And what he said was not advocating for political violence. He made a fucking joke. I'm sorry, you're allowed to make jokes still. The First Amendment still stands. Now, I'm not arguing that this is like 100% a First Amendment issue. I think it's the spirit of the First Amendment, but I don't actually think it violates the law of the First Amendment, because The First Amendment doesn't say nobody can prevent you from saying a thing. What it says is that the government can't stop you from saying something. And people will extrapolate that to mean that a corporation can't stop you from saying that, but that's different, right? Because insofar as you have a right to say whatever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want, businesses and private citizens also have a right to not be bothered with your presence for whatever reason if you are on their property and they don't want you to be, right? And that's one of those areas where your rights might collide. And in a case like that, you'd probably be asked to go shout your curses from the sidewalk or something like that. Righties have always been the actual snowflakes. Yep. It's not something they talk about altogether too much because they know it makes them look like shit. But yeah, you really want to see somebody who's like utterly obsessed with their like oppression culture and their cult of personality and their fucking victim complex. Dude, look at a right winger. No greater home for that attitude than the right wing, I swear to God. Democrats equals slave owners then and now. Thank God I'm not a Democrat. Have we finally found our place of agreement, everybody? You know, whatever else we may disagree on, at least we all know that the Democrats are full of shit. You know? It's a uniting factor. It really is. Come on, bring it all in, everybody. Bring it in. Kumbaya, my lord. Kumbaya. How are you, woman, even though you look nothing like one? Tell that to all the chasers that come in my chat and like constantly have like nice things to say about how I look on any given day. You might not think I look very feminine. I don't give a shit. They're going to make trans illegal? Well, let me ask you this. If you belonged to a group that the FBI was considering adding to a new terrorist designation, would you consider that a direct affront to your ability to be part of that community? To your ability to live safely as a citizen in America, as a member of that community? Or would that make you think twice? Would that make you wonder? Because that's what's going on. The FBI is seriously discussing, apparently, according to a report, excuse me, that cataloged information from, among other things, two senior officials at the FBI who, whatever, I'll get into this later, but two senior officials at the FBI apparently confirmed in this report, I forget who the dude was who released it, that trans people are actively being targeted by the FBI, or at least discussed as an element of targeting for this new terrorist designation, basically, where we're going to be considered, if this were to actually happen, we would be considered, what was the fucking term? Nihilistic violent extremists. And that's, once again, despite the fact that we share literally one thing. Trans people share literally one thing, and that is identifying with a gender other than that which was assigned to us at birth on the basis of our sex. They're illegal. What happened to self-expression? That's what I'm wondering, Gemma. I was literally making that point earlier, and it's absurd, because like these right-wingers have no way to cope with it. They have no way to address it, because what would they say? Like, what can they possibly say? Because the truth of it is, what they should be saying is, we don't give a fuck about self-expression. That's just some shit we pull out of the box whenever you guys are trying to give us a hard time for being Christians or conservatives or whatever. You think we actually give a shit about that? That is the fucking actual honest response that they should be giving. But they're not going to give it. Why? Well, number one, because that's political suicide. That's what we call letting the mask slip. Fake news. Fake news. No one is taking your rights away. Tell that to the FBI officials who are apparently discussing adding trans people broadly to a new terrorist designation. Argue with God. Look at all the rhetoric coming out of Donald Trump, the FBI, and every fucking institution that Donald Trump and his cronies have their fucking grubby fingers in. You look at every one of those institutions, and they are all using this as an opportunity to target trans people in particular. And by the way, this answers something that I posed to you guys a few months ago. I don't know if any of you guys are in here or remember it, but a few months ago, I asked you, or maybe even a few weeks ago, I asked you guys, what do you think is going to be the next step? Like, who do you think is going to be the next group after Mexicans? Because eventually, they're going to deport so many people that they're not going to be able to do that much more deporting, that it's going to have to slow down and kind of get more infrequent just by virtue of having less people to do it on. And the problem with a fascist state is that the problem can never die. The problem can never die because the solutions to the fake problem, the fake solutions to the non-problem are, by their very nature, not solutions, because a fake problem we're talking about, they are control mechanisms for a population. And so, Mexicans can't be where it ends. It's going to have to go to trans people. Well, I got news for you guys. They're not going to stop with us either. No matter how many of us they come for, no matter how many of us they put away for spurious reasons or whatever, no matter how many people that happens to, there will be someone else. I personally don't think trans surgery should be allowed. I mean, you can identify as whatever, I guess, but surgery can cause problems with your body that could possibly be permanent, especially if botched. Yeah, that's not your decision to make. I'm sorry. What gives you the right to make a decision for another person? What gives you the right to tell me what I can and cannot do to my body? What gives me the right to tell you what you can and can't do with yours? If I were to say, I think all cisgender men should get a vasectomy, you would probably consider that a pretty serious affront to personal liberty and autonomy. Or if, for example, I were able to say the corollary, which is that no cis men in America will be allowed to get a vasectomy, you would probably be pretty opposed to that. If you wouldn't, that demonstrates a real uncomfortable and kind of disconcerting disconnection with what I consider sacrosanct principle of self-expression and the right to self-expression, the right to freedom of speech, the right to gather amongst a group of your peers, etc. Make sure you guys hit that like button, by the way. It really does help. Every single time you hit that like button is a chance to send the stream out to even more people, which increases the quality of your viewing pleasure by increasing the number of people who can engage in the chat. Hell yeah. Wee. Woo. So you go to a female bathrooms or the men's? If I'm in public, I'm going to try to avoid any kind of like multi-person bathroom, period. If I absolutely have to, I'll go to the men's room because I don't really think the climate right now in America is really safe for trans women to be going into, well, really public restrooms in general. But I think we get less shit when we go into the men's room. because all the transphobes feel like they've humiliated us. They've seen a humiliated trans, and maybe if they're even lucky, because most of these people are deeply attracted to trans people, maybe they'll even get to see a glimpse of a trans dick or something. Oh my God, wouldn't that be their day made? So I try to avoid multi-person restrooms in public for that reason. I mean, not that there are really any multi-public, like that only exists in public. That was so redundant. That was like a tautology for no reason. Anyway, I will go to a single person bathroom in public, but that's what I look for. I look for like a single person. I call them gender neutral bathrooms because they always, like, almost universally have the same shit. And sometimes they're gender marked, but like a lot of times it doesn't actually fucking matter because if you go in there, like I said, they both have the same shit. Sometimes the women's room will have a baby changing table and the men's room won't, but increasingly they'll both have them. And in a case like that, I'll go to the women's room because, like, who fucking gives a fuck? Nobody seems to care, really, when it's a single-person bathroom. You think he's employed? Employers aren't falling for this stuff anymore. Well, luckily for me, I don't work for some other person or, like, a giant corporation. I mean, I guess I do in a sense. Hell, YouTube takes, like, a fucking third of every super chat I get, so... Not that I'm bitching, you know. I understand that they've got high overhead and all that. But it's still a corporation taking, you know, the lion's share of the profits from the people who are actually doing the work to make it a decent platform worth visiting. Is being trans normal? It depends on what you mean by the phrase normal. If by normal you mean, is it, like, widely accepted in society? It depends on the region. If by normal do you mean it's a normal part of the human experience, that it's something that can happen and has always happened in a very small percentage of the population for, you know, a really, really fucking really long time, yeah, it's normal in that sense. Is it normal in the sense that it's common? No. But in the sense that it's like a biological and social reality, yes, very normal. In the sense that it's like widely accepted, I would say that in some places it's pretty weird, and in some places it's pretty normal. Normal has very different meanings depending on what you're talking about, the frame of reference that you're in, etc., etc. So I like to give varied answers when normalcy is the metric that we're trying to measure. Which, by the way, I think it's a pretty shitty metric. I don't really think normalcy says much. What is so good about being normal? And two, the converse to, or the inverse rather, of normal, that's subjective too. There's some people that would argue that the inverse of normal is perverse. There's some people that would say that it's weird. There's some people that would say that it's either sub-average or above average or something like that. There are all kinds of ways that you can break this down. Very complicated topic. And very overrated concept, normalcy. I think she's aware she was born a male. That doesn't mean you can't respect her presentation. Yeah, I'm literally aware that I was born assigned male at birth. Is this like a weird thing you guys don't understand? about trans people. Do you do you guys not understand that we know that we're trans? I I find myself dumbfounded sometimes when I argue with people like this because I legitimately don't know that I get a fucking hide or hair of what they're saying. Like, I don't know that I understand the argument. No. Oh, I collapsed my nice tower. It's no good. Yeah, exactly. Sex and gender are different fucking things. And as evidence for this, I point to you the way that the social construct that is gender has changed so many times throughout human history. Holy shit. Thank you for the $10, Ghetto Jesus. Dude, I love seeing you up in. Gaming YouTubers I used to watch are now spouting this awful rhetoric. It sucks. They seemed like cool dudes, but after Covington, or after COVID maybe, or Covington, I don't know. They went on the whole anti-woke bandwagon and are now complete morons. I'm thinking you might have meant COVID there. Because that's when I noticed it. I don't know about you, but I noticed that, I'm assuming you did mean COVID, and if indeed you did, that's when I noticed that things started to go really fucking batshit crazy. And you know what was the first thing that did, Ghetto Jesus? It was the fucking mask mandate. That was the first thing that I noticed really started to show the lines clearly. All kinds of people. That's so weird. Somebody should do a documentary about that or some shit, or like a deep dive into it or some shit. Dude, somebody needs to look into that. They're like, why? Because there's been all kinds of rhetoric the right has used all kinds of times before in history. Why is it that was what got to the right wing? Because before that, dude, I found out all kinds of people were right wing or right wing adjacent in the wake of COVID that I never knew were that way. Never had any idea they were that way. And it's because they just didn't post about politics before then. But that was the thing I noticed, and then it was like, after the mask mandate, the stay-at-home orders and shit. Actually, I can't remember which one of those got politicized first. Yeah, COVID damn autocorrect. It's all right. It is what it is. You've got the #1 fan spot, Ghetto Jesus. Good job. Is my identity a social, cultural, and personal concept too? I mean, I think everyone's identity is, right? It's all psychology. And, so culture is just one lens that we look at psychology through. It's one way that psychology expresses itself. Personality, same thing. Your very personhood is based on the chemical reactions going on inside your head. All of these things exist in the conceptual space, not in the tangible space. You can't reach out and touch love. You can't reach out and touch culture. You can't reach out and touch heritage, And in that way, everybody's identity is kind of open to interpretation in some way. Sex is biological and factual, and not the only marker of gender. Not the only indicator of gender. Yeah, so we agree. Great. Homer. Seatbelts kill more than they save. Misa. Dad, you're thinking of airbags. Yeah. That's a good line. That's not still true, is it? I'm thinking it was true at one point, wasn't it? But I'm thinking they pretty much got that shit figured out by now. I'll tell you this much. It's been a while since I've seen a car at a fender bender with the seat or with the airbag deployed. So if you like men, does that make you gay? I guess so, yeah. Wait, no, me? Like me personally? No, like if I just liked men, I would be a straight woman, but I'm not. I'm pansexual, so I'll anything with a hole. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, I'm not kidding about being pan. I'm just kidding about that particular way of phrasing it. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't have to worry about that particular designation because I'm bi, so I'm not like hard limited to one or the other. If the right wing was so bad, then Trump wouldn't be president. There's a reason why he won the election. Yeah, most of it's because the Democrats put up a horrible candidate. You realize that? Just off the top of your head, without looking it up, I want you to tell me what percentage of Americans that were eligible to vote voted for Donald Trump in the last election. I want you to guess. What percentage of voting eligible Americans voted for Donald Trump in the last elections. Don't look it up. Guess. Imagine walking up to someone at a bus stop and asking them about their dick and pussy and who they like and what to fucking wear, and then telling them they are the weird ones. I know. Dude, you come up to me, ask me an incredibly fucking pertinent question that I would never just answer for a random stranger, but because I kind of get paid to answer questions here, there's like an incentive to do it. And I give you that answer, and then you call me the fucking weird one. Like, you're the fucking weirdo. You're the one who just literally ran up to a random person you don't know, started asking them questions about their fucking penis. Like, I don't know. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. I don't know what to tell these people sometimes. Wasn't it like 60%? Nope. 65%? Nope. There's a reason why MAGA is not coming in here with the statistics. I'll tell you guys what the statistics are. You know how many people voted for Trump last year? About a third of the country. About a third of the country. Let me break down the math for you. The biggest group of voters in 2024 were non-voters. People who didn't vote at all. So I guess you can't call them a group of voters, but the biggest group of, the biggest part of eligible voters didn't vote in 2024. The rest were divided up amongst independents, which attracted, I think, 2 or 3% of the overall voting eligible population, and man, sometimes my brain blanks so hard. Anyway, the Republicans and Democrats the rest of the country is basically divided between those two. So you carve off 35%, that leaves you with 65%. You divide 65% in two, you get 32.5%. And we're going to assume, because the right wing did win with a fairly comfortable margin, Trump won with a pretty comfortable margin. So we'll round it up, and we'll say the Democrats probably got 32%, and the Republicans probably got 33%. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. It might be more like the Republicans got 32% and the Democrats got 30%. And that allows for a little bit more room for the independent vote. But that's how it actually breaks down. So a little less than a third of the country voted for Donald Trump last year. That's why Trump won. Don't let people go around and misinforming you. Don't let people go around lying, saying that this was some massive red wave and the whole country is just on board with Trump now. Because the majority of Americans just didn't vote, period. As far as or not the majority of Americans, but that's not the right way to put it. But you get what I'm trying to say, right? Republicans, they didn't win like an actual majority if you include the non-voters. Neither did Democrats, and of course the independents didn't. That is why Trump won. Because the fucking Republican Party can afford to have a bunch of people that are checked out of the electoral process. The Democrats can't. The Dems need those extra margins. The Dems really need those extra margins. They need people in the rural areas to pick up for them sometimes. And they didn't get it last year because they ran a horrible fucking candidate. An awful candidate that they knew couldn't win. That they pretty much knew couldn't win. And I think the reason they did that is because fundraising is never better than in a Trump administration. I think that there was a part of the Democratic Party that wanted to lose, that wanted to punt it back to the Republicans so that they could fundraise for another 4 years. Because I don't think the Democratic Party gives a fuck about actually improving the country. I think they give a fuck about improving the numbers in their bank account. What is so sacred about public restrooms and who uses them? Are restrooms like a place where transphobes think people lounge? Because when I use a restroom, I just want to do my business and get out. Transphobes have this fucking idea in their head that trans people are these like malicious beings that just corrupt everything they touch. And so, in their minds, every other person that goes into a restroom is just a normal person. But when trans people go into a bathroom, it's to fuck with people. It's to, insert weird right-wing fantasy here. Gotta gather up some more wood. These pieces are promising. If I don't fucking die trying to get them on there, that is. This thing feels so rotted, like I can just drop it a couple of times and it might actually break on its own. Yep, I was right. Man, being a human being is great. We're so fucking smart. We're so bright. We're such bright folks. Alrighty. Well, it's definitely got the little furnace made. Now I just need to gather me up some sticks. I wonder if they've done any experiments on, latent evolutionarily driven skills in human beings. I wonder if somebody could build a fire if they'd never done it before, if you just gave them enough time and sufficient materials. I think they could do it. I think they could do it. The fats and skinnies will inherit the earth. Yes. Wait, so everybody is going to inherit the earth? It's called relational frame theory in psychology. Nice. I need to learn more about that. Owls creep you out. They do the opposite for me. For some reason, I feel reassured when I'm exploring somewhere and I hear an owl. Once I realize that's what it is, I'm always like, oh, how pleasant, you know? Make sure you guys hit that like button if you haven't hit it already. I know I pimped it a lot this stream, but it really does help. Is that a frog? I'm so confused. Are you camping? No, I just live in kind of a beautiful place sometimes. It's beautiful sometimes. I don't know, dude. Mississippi's got so many problems. It's so fucked up down here. It's so bad. Oh my god. But it's also, you know, my family's owned land down here since the 40s. It's a very small patch compared to what it used to be, but this little patch, at the very least, and the associated patch with it, has been passed down for the last 80 years or something like that. And, you know, it's a nice secluded place in the country. It's not too secluded, you know. We don't have, like, direct neighbors, but we've got some other people on this road. But it's far enough away from the city that we hardly ever hear sirens. The only real noise we have to deal with is the train, which luckily there haven't been that many tonight, knock on wood. But normally the trains are pretty annoying. Other than that, we really don't deal with that much noise, and you're able to hear all kinds of different animals. So what you're hearing right now is, the loudest one is a cricket. The one right behind me is a cricket. Those are katydids. You can look those up. They're big old crickets, basically, big green crickets. There are some frog calls mixed in there. I can hear some frog calls. Now, those could also be crickets. It's kind of hard to tell at this distance. But a lot of what you're hearing are just crickets, like different species of crickets. Oh my god. Now that you guys got me to tune into it, I almost don't want to listen to like myself talk. It really is restorative to sit and listen to all of these night animals, all these night bugs. I'm so used to it, y'all. I'm so used to it that I don't appreciate it as much as I used to when I was a kid, but man, when I do, I'm so happy about it. I spent so much of the last 10 years of my life living in towns and shit where you just don't get to hear this. It's just not part of your night. You might hear some crickets, sure, but unless you live in a city or a town that has really put a lot of effort into remaining halfway wild, you're probably not hearing all this like night noise. Your dad is from DeKalb? From DeKalb? Where at? Mississippi or Missouri? You know what's crazy is those cicadas. I don't hear them by you, but when I was up in Tennessee, I heard them a lot. Well, cicadas only sound off in daytime. So, as far as I know, I don't know of any cicada species that sound at night. Um, but if I was streaming out here in the daytime, you might hear a few of them. But honestly, I didn't hear that many cicadas this year. I don't know if they're becoming less common around here or what, but I just didn't hear that many of them this year. Of course, I was also not up early as often for a lot of this year, or I was getting up so early that it was before any of the cicadas would be sounding, and by the time I got off of work, it was so late that they weren't, But anyway, yeah, no, cicadas are are fucking crazy animals, but they're also wild animals, but you know what I mean. Yeah, yeah. Um, Annual cicadas come out every year, and then you've got the burrowing cicadas or whatever they're called, the semi-annuals, the 17 and the 13-year cicadas, which is just a crazy thing to think about. What a weird adaptation. I wonder what the utility of that is. There's got to be some reason evolutionarily why that is. Got to be some kind of weird ass reason for that. How come you're in the same black dress 2 days ago? Because it's a cute dress and I like to wear it often. Well, it's not a dress, it's a shirt, but still. As a person from West Washington State living in New Mexico ruined my sleep for 10 years till I discovered ASMR. Crickets are mandatory. Oh, yeah, dude. New Mexico will trip you out. Although I will tell you, I don't remember what area you said you lived in New Mexico, but it does depend on the area you're in. Because if you're in some of the more northerly regions, or if you're in like the Sangre de Cristos or the, what are they called? The fuck. Um, I can't remember what they're called, but it's like a far south offshoot, basically, of the Rocky Mountains. I forget what it's called, what the Rocky Mountain range, or what the range, whatever. I forget what it's fucking called, okay? But the Apaches they have a reservation down there. They got some casinos down there, and I remember hearing some kind of night sound out there. I think, at least in the rural areas. But now that I think about it, I really don't know. Now that I really fucking think about it, I feel like there had to have been crickets, but goddamn, now I actually can't. I can't tell if the crickets I'm hearing in this memory are real crickets or if it's crickets I'm inserting in there because I think that there were, and because I naturally want to be right, Wait, you said you were living in Las Cruces, and if that's the case, I remember just now, you, I think, mentioned that you had been living in Las Cruces, and if that's the case, then I would guess that that region probably doesn't have anything making noise at night. But I would argue that if you get into the more temperate areas of New Mexico, it's a little different. I can't live in the country. I'm too much of a city kid. All the stores that sell the stuff I like are in the cities, and I prefer brick and mortar stores over Amazon. Oh, that's valid. I mean, my thing is, I want to have close access to the city, but I don't want to have to deal with the city's bullshit all day long, because I get really sick of the kind of life that you have to live in. When you're living in a city, I get kind of sick of that shit, and I almost never get sick of living in the country. There are some times when it sucks, but for the most part, it's really, in my mind, preferable for me personally. There are definitely cities I think I could live in, but I would need to find. I would just need to find the perfect fucking neighborhood. Honestly, it would have to be in a weed legal state, and it would have to be in a fucking non-judgmental part of the country, and it would have to be like a non-judgmental part of town. I wouldn't want them to be like super weird about noise, but I also wouldn't want them to be like constantly making a bunch of racket themselves. Trying to move to Oregon or Washington State, I can't say I blame you. Honestly, I would love to move my family. Like, honestly, if I could have my druthers, I would love to move my family up to Canada, to be completely fucking honest with you. Find some kind of patch of wilderness that's just barely livable in Canada. Call it a day. But for just one night, I would take the Northwest Passage and find the hand of Franklin reaching for the Beaufort Sea, tracing one warm line through the land so wild and savage, to find a Northwest Passage to the sea. Will we? We will prevail. We'll get through this. It's gonna be alright. Aren't these all just weird little lies we tell ourselves to distract ourselves from how bad shit's gotten? Aren't these all just weird little, like, I don't know, dude, I do some of the same shit. I think we all do, but let's think critically about it for a second. Are we just, like, relegating ourselves to the dustbin of history? Because I kind of feel like we are. I kind of feel like even a lot of people that are currently bemoaning Charlie Kirk and acting like an American-centric, America-first perspective is the only, like, valid one to have, I don't even think a lot of those people have any real faith or trust in America anymore. Or the future or any of that shit. I'm a hybrid choice. On the one hand, I want a homestead to grow turnips, collards, and ducks. However, I also want to be a metrosexual who wakes up to walk down to a local coffee joint. Oof. Yeah. I will tell you, there are definitely places. There are places where you might be able to find something like that. But that exact setup, kind of hard to have. And I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense, right? If you think about it, it makes sense because in order to justify allowing people to have whatever they want, you have to make sure that they're a certain distance away from, food service facilities and places of business and things like that. Because ideally, you don't want livestock like rummaging through town, shitting up the place, and leaving their dung and whatever they bring with them, right? Because it's not like livestock are particularly disease ridden or something, but they are a method of contagion, and it's something we've had a lot of problems with in the past. So there are legitimate health reasons why that kind of zoning exists. Why, no matter how generous your zoning laws might be, they probably don't allow you to do any greater agriculture than a backyard garden and maybe some chickens. Maybe if you're lucky, you might be able to find a place that'll let you have a goat. Maybe. Maybe. But there are legitimate health reasons for that, not least of all because you don't want people, you know, like I said, animals bring all kinds of disease with them wherever they go. They don't mean to. It's not like they're inherently dirty, but the chance is there. The problem is that annoying people adopt protected identities, then blame people who won't tolerate their provocative behavior as prejudice. You realize that, like, being trans is actively fucking... It's not only is it not protected in America, it's actively fucking fought against, Tyler. So where the fuck are you getting that, bud? Like, where the hell is that coming from? Why would I willingly, like, if it was all just down to fucking convenience, why would anyone be trans? If people were just being trans for the convenience, there would be no trans people, because there is no convenience in being fucking trans. Literally, the FBI, I don't know if you heard me earlier, Tyler, I know you got shit in your ears, clean them out and listen real quick. The FBI is literally trying to classify trans people, all trans people, as terrorists, as a new type of terrorist. They want to loop us in with this new fucking designation that they're making. You can look it up. So don't tell me that there's some fucking... Don't tell me that there's some kind of, like, protection incentive or some kind of, like, weird social game going on here, when in fact the social game that is going on is getting trans people into a position where you guys can genocide us. That's the fucking social game being played here. Normalizing rhetoric against trans people, normalizing anger towards us, normalizing hatred against us, normalizing hateful, bigoted things about us that aren't true, normalizing the spreading of that kind of misinformation. All of it is meant to position trans people as the next target of a Trump genocide, as the next target of an American oppression campaign. That's the left media feeding you rhetoric. Don't believe your lying ears. Don't believe your lying eyes. Yeah, keep telling me not to believe my lying ears and my lying eyes. This ain't got shit to do with the media, bro. This has got to do with me looking around and observing things accurately. I don't spend all day looking at the news, motherfucker. I listen to some people commentate about the news, but for the most part, I'm listening to people talk about their positions, or I'm watching a documentary. Lately, I've been watching a lot of, like, pilot YouTube. So, like, people, like, flying planes and talking about plane crashes and shit. That's what I spend most of my day doing. I'm not like some big giant news hound that's, like, constantly looking for the DNC line. And in fact, if you had anything more than a base level apprehension of American politics, if you had anything more than a base level type of perception about American politics, then you would be able to identify quite a few non-DNC sanctioned viewpoints and talking points that I've made. You probably would have caught some of my anti-DNC advocacy. You probably would have caught some of my advocacy against the mainstream media as a concept. You probably would have heard me advocate for people within the mainstream media to go become independent and do their own thing so that they can actually be themselves and sit and speak their mind. You probably would have heard some of that if you weren't just looking for whatever you can fucking listen for that will stroke your narrative. You aren't interested in engaging in the conversation. You're not interested in engaging in the argument. You're interested in hearing things that absolve your narrative. The conservatives in my local newspaper's op-ed column called what the FBI was doing as dystopian. Well, it is. It fucking is. I mean, it is fucking dystopian, dude. I mean, that's the fucking thing, dude. There is an online contingent of conservatives who would literally defend Donald Trump murdering somebody in Times Square with a Tommy gun. Murdering everybody standing in Times Square with a Tommy gun. If he did it, there is a certain percentage of online maggots that would literally support him through it all. Literally. There are people like that out there. But there are also incredibly reasonable people who aren't like that. Reasonable people who don't want to see that kind of danger visited upon people merely because they have the wrong opinion. Right-wing trans people exist? Yes, I'm aware that trans Uncle Toms exist. I'm aware. And yes, before you ask, I'm aware of Blair White, aka Benedicta Arnoldette. You know. If I was a bigger YouTuber, I would probably get canceled for calling right-wing trans people trans Uncle Toms. But whatever. I'm not going to stop saying it how I see it. I'm not going to stop calling it how I see it. Not going to stop. Not going to stop. Whatever. So, is what it is. I feel bad for trans people. We are getting all kinds of flack right now. Oh yes. Oh yes. It has moved beyond. It has moved beyond random, people on the internet calling us true and fucking gooners or whatever, and moved into the. It's moved into the vicinity of like actual fucking real time IRL oppression, where like it is seriously being like discussed. Like, should we remove these people's rights? Do they deserve the same human rights as everybody else? Can we suppress their freedom of expression? Glitch dash. Glitch dash. Right-wing media says the left wants to ban guns. Do I believe that that's the majority? No. Well, then good. Your opinion aligns with reality in this case. Yeah, because the right-wing media says that no lefties own guns and that all lefties are like universally against guns. And the truth of it is, like, hardcore DNC types are sometimes anti-gun, but increasingly no. And the left never was. Like, the hardcore actual left never was anti-gun. In fact, ironically, some of the best arguments for why a population should be armed come from leftist thinkers. Just because the NRA says it doesn't mean they came up with it. You have to use your own judgment of the world? I do. That's why I said it's got nothing to do with the media. That's why I got so pissed off at you when you said that I'm just like letting the left-wing media guide me down some kind of cow path. It's like, you're assuming that I don't do that. You're assuming that here's how it comes off to me, Tyler. Maybe you didn't mean it this way, but it comes off like you think you're smarter than me, like you're better than me, like you're better educated and better informed, because if I was just as good informed as you are, I would have your same exact opinions. It can't come down to a fundamental philosophical difference. No, it's that you got to be smarter than me, right? That's how it comes off. Now, I really don't give a fuck whether you think I'm smarter than you or not, but I take umbrage with the idea that I'm too stupid to think for myself based merely on the fact that I have leftist opinions. Because you would take umbrage with that if I said it about you and the right wing. When I look at my own judgment and examine what's going on, the objective facts say what they say. And the facts in this particular instance are that the entire Trump administration has been railing against trans people for a while now. And that senior level officials at the FBI who were not revealed or didn't give their name, and for fear of retribution probably, discussed with a news reporter, with a journalist, in private obviously, about how some people at the FBI are now discussing whether or not they should or would be able to add trans people broadly to a new designation of terrorists that they're working on. It's going to be published later this year. A new type. Nihilistic violent extremist. New type of terrorist dropping, y'all. Will trans people be added? Wait and see. It's genuinely fucking dystopian. Legitimately dystopian. It's thought crime. It's thought policing. It's the government telling you how you can and cannot dress, how you can and cannot feel about yourself. And even if you're a conservative, you should be afraid of that, because I got news for you, motherfucker. America's systems may be pretty faulty, but I don't think they're so faulty that you guys are going to manage to get Trump in as president for life or some shit. You guys are not going to make that much of a splash, and in 3 to 4 years or whatever, when a Democrat takes back over, oh my God, dude, you better be ready. Oh my God. You don't want to normalize this. I'm telling people on the right, you guys should be bitching about this just as much as the left is. It shouldn't just be people on the left saying, hey, this is kind of fucked up. We were like saying this was fucked up when they were doing it to us, so why are we doing it to them? Like, doesn't that just make the situation worse? Doesn't that just, like, continue the chain? Because I swear to God, you realize escalation works like that. Somebody at some point in the fucking exchange has to choose to de-escalate. But no one's going to de-escalate when the stakes are people's human rights. So it's going to have to be you guys that de-escalate. And that's good, bad, right, or wrong. I'm not saying that's how it should be. I'm just saying that's how it is. As the great Bosch once said, I didn't make it that way, my dude. It is that way. I'm going to go through fan funding real quick, just make sure I saw all the super chats. Ghetto Jesus, Riley Weston, thank you guys, thank you guys. Thank you guys. Aw, yeah, okay, I saw all of them, cool. What's an assault rifle? In my estimation, assault rifle is mostly a buzzword used by left-leaning media outlets to demonize the very idea of a very specific type of rifle that can be used for a variety of purposes. Most of the people that I know that have the kind of rifle that is usually termed an assault rifle most often today, which would be an AR-15 or varieties of firearm that look like it, most of the people I know that have those guns have them for fucking vermin hunting. Varmint hunting, basically, which is, say you've got a raccoon getting into your chickens, right? Well, an AR-15 is a great fucking weapon to bring down because most of them fire 5.56. It's not a big giant round. It's big enough to kill a raccoon or something like that. Certainly big enough to run one off. It's got, you can fit it with a pretty high capacity magazine, which allows you to get a lot of shots off at it if it's like late at night and dark and you're trying to get this fucking squirrely bastard before he gets away. Like, there's advantages that it lends if you are trying to dispatch moving targets at night with kind of weird conditions, Great rifle for that. And some people get them that are chambered in larger rounds, like 7.62, and they'll use them for hunting game and stuff like that. Although it's my understanding that the AR-15 in particular is not actually that well suited to the task of hunting long distance, that it's mostly more to be used at the medium kind of range, but I may be wrong on that. An assault rifle is a rifle that is a rifle that has semi-auto and automatic selection switch used in the military. I don't think that's an actual definition that the fucking military uses, though, is it? It is. That's news to me. I've never been in the military, so it wouldn't shock me. But I would also argue that the definition I gave is the definition that people are thinking of, right? Like I said, it's a buzzword. Whatever it may actually mean, nowadays it's a buzzword used to refer to anything that looks vaguely like an M16, including the AR-15 and its derivatives, etc. And like I said, just every gun that kind of looks like it. AK-47, SKS, whatever. They're all assault rifles to somebody. But the truth of it is, none of them are, unless they've got that switch, according to that definition you gave. I don't know if that's accurate. I'm just saying. That train ain't close to fucking... That train ain't close yet. What is your dream life? Where would you like to be in the next 10 years? Oh, man. I love answering this question, truth be told, because it just invites me to fantasize. Let me hit the bowl and I'll tell you. I would like to be in a completely legal state where I can grow my own. So, Missouri or Illinois, because I would also want to be in a state where I can still grow things for food pretty easily. I would want to be able to grow things outside for food without having to go through a giant fucking process of building a bunch of greenhouses for everything. 1 or 2 is fine, whatever. I'm going to have somewhere to keep the herbs growing and all that shit, but I want to be able to have a big outdoor garden, like I've always had, like my parents have always had, and their parents before them, Okay, now the train actually is coming, so I'm about to have to hold my ears. Give me 1 second. here's the thing. I'm seeing a conversation go on in chat, and I need to address it. And I'm thinking, as I was answering that last question, letting the train go by, I've been thinking about how I would address it, and I finally figured out how I'm going to address it. So here's how. We don't language police here, and there's a very good reason for that, because there are a lot of places that are doing it right now, and I don't personally believe that it's very conducive to conversation. As much as it might be way nicer to deal with on just like a fundamental level, I don't actually think it does terribly productive things, in other words, for actually having conversations with people. I think people feel, in fact, I don't just think this, I've got very good reason to believe this, not just personal anecdote after personal anecdote, but as far as I know, the science backs me up on this idea. People are apt to take arguments with just their ideas alone as some kind of affront to their personality, them personally. But they especially do it if you go after something they consider a part of their personality or manner of speech. If you start to go after them personally, because most people are able to separate their ideas from them. They're able to think, especially most people willing to talk about ideas, period, able to separate those kinds of things. But most people are not able to separate the way that they speak and everything else from their value as a person. And so when someone attacks something like that or says that they shouldn't, now Riley is not that kind of person. Riley is like going to take it on the chin and be cool, but I don't do it, and I don't like it when other people do it in my chat, because I don't want this to become a place where people get banned just for saying faggot, because I like to know when I'm arguing with a bigot. I like to know. I like them to feel comfortable enough to show their power level so I can argue with the truth of their position. I really fucking hate having disingenuous arguments where I'm arguing with somebody that really wants to say a lot more, but really can't because, they're trying to look good in front of the camera, basically, or whatever, right? There's all of this maneuvering, I feel like, that goes into having a conversation, and I hate that shit. And this is a place where I try to tear that shit down, and in its place, we put real, actual, sometimes quite hurtful conversation. And it's not a place for everybody. It's not some place that appeals universally to every single person out there. But I will tell you, I don't regularly call people retarded. I do sometimes, I'm not going to lie. Which, whatever. I'm autistic. I was like in special ed when I was a kid, all throughout most of my schooling career, so people knew. I got that word levied at me a bunch of times throughout my life. And, I survived. Not saying it was right. It was obviously wrong. But I also sometimes think that a lot of the things that cause that are things that we need to address by really getting serious about certain policy issues. And if we corrected those, then the incidences of people lashing out in hateful ways like that would go infinitely down. And so my strategy, right, my viewpoint on this is it is better to not language police, to come at people exactly how they come at you, to come at people exactly how they need to be came at. That sounded weird, but anyway, to work with people and meet them where they're at, rather than trying to fix the social side of things, and then through that somehow we're going to convince them. I don't think that doesn't work. The truth of it is, most Americans agree with us when we say we want universal health care. Where it gets contentious is when you get into these social issues, and so that's why I'm a bigger fan of being aggressive about these big policy issues that would affect everybody's lives and massively reduce tensions and poverty and all of that in this country. It would make things way better, make things way more livable, which has a 100% fucking effect on, like, I'm not saying that as an actual statistic, I'm just saying it really has like a strong effect on how much hate crime happens. I mean, kind of like famously during the Jim Crow era and also during the Civil War and pre-Civil War era, lynchings would always go up when the price of cotton would go down. No, and that is not me saying it's right by any means. Please do not take that the wrong way. What I'm saying is that you can look at a bunch of examples through history where when shit gets bad economically, when people feel their pockets hurting, they get pissed and they start to look for a scapegoat. That's what I'm saying. But if that scapegoat comes to them and says, "Hey, we're not that different. Let's fucking work together and make a fucking better system." If you address the things that actually affect you both, now that's obviously something that the folks I used in my example, the enslaved people, could not have used, right? But us wage slaves, we can use that. We can unite in solidarity across racial lines, across gender lines, across ideological lines, and stand in unison for things like universal health care, for things like student loan forgiveness and subsidization through taxes of higher education. Um, Fucking infrastructure renewal and standardization in infrastructure. Dude, there are so many fucking people that are sick to fucking death of driving to work every day or driving to school every day or wherever they have to go on shitty, horrible fucking roads that were built millennia ago, basically. There were some of them. There are literally people who were born and have had full fucking lives and have died since the road that I live on was paved for the first time, and it's never been actually repaved, ever. They've never came down because what they do, because it's like the way they paved it was so cheap to begin with. It was like, like like the basic fucking ground levels and everything. But then it's I forget the name of the strategy or whatever you'd call it, the technique. There we go. I forget the name of the technique. I think it's chip and seal, where they're basically just pouring a few layers of rock, and then this top layer of rock gets covered up and kind of mashed in with some tar, I guess, based on the smell. And they go through and do that a few times and press it in. And they have to redo that like every year, every 2 years or something like that, because it wears off. Obviously, in the super fucking hot Mississippi summers, they get hotter every year. And so every year, like it's happened 4 or 5 times this year where I've gotten out and had to go somewhere. I had to let the car cool down for 5 minutes with them get in there and start to drive, or I would have just passed out, no joke. And then when I get on the road, I literally kind of like smile this grim smile because I can literally see the tar on the very top layer moistened by the heat. It's literally so fucking hot that it's about to melt. Roads like this need fucking completely redone, but there's no money to do it in a state like Mississippi. It would require a standardization project. It would require something like a New Deal, like a massive citizens workers corps that takes care of all of these fucking, like, the conservatives are always fucking preaching for welfare to work, and while I don't necessarily agree with the program at all, I don't think it's effective, all that other shit. I don't think your right to live should be predicated on your ability to work, etc., etc. I don't believe in the concept of social parasitism outside of the bourgeoisie, and I think that is a very distinct type, right? But fuck, I forgot where I was going. Most Republicans hate the rich. Have you heard of the song Richmond, North of Richmond? Most Americans hate the rich. Damn, I can't remember any of the lyrics to it, but yeah, I've heard the song Richmond, North of Richmond, and I like it. And yeah, like whatever. It's kind of a. I'm gonna admit it. I think the fudge round thing is a little tasteless, but let's fucking be fucking real here. Are there people who abuse the welfare system in America? As shitty and fucking hard to get into as it is, yeah, there are some. I don't think it's a widespread problem. I think way more people are genuinely helped by it than are just fucking scraping a living off of it. erroneously and fraudulently. I think it's way overblown by the conservatives, but it does exist. The idea that none of it's happening, which is what you'll hear from some lefties and liberals, and it just goes to show you like the reactionary nature of our politics, right? We on the left are just as apt as the right is to base a position off of just trying to be as opposite of the right as we possibly can be. I don't base my positions off of that. I try to think my positions out. Fucking call me crazy, but I try to think out the shit I believe before like committing to believing it, which is why I don't have like the liberal position on guns. That's why I've got the like hardcore lefty, or in some people's mind, right-wing position on guns. I could go on a number of examples, but yeah. The class warfare thing, it's something that the right and the left are aware of, but the right is way more willing to cozy up to corporate America. And the right has rhetoric for it too, right? Capitalist rhetoric is inherently right-wing. And when Democrats or people who call themselves leftists or liberals start using capitalist rhetoric and start backing up the virtues of capitalism the way people like, say, Nancy Pelosi did, it's like evidence of their having moved to the right, because that kind of rhetoric is inherently capitalist. Or, I'm sorry, it's inherently right-wing. And as a result, right-wing right-wing people with what I would consider economically left positions, I consider you guys kind of a rarity these days. Although it does seem like there has been somewhat of a resurgence, I'll give you guys that. But my thing is, I question if that's genuine, right? Because the right wing will say, like, duh, dude, we hate rich people too. But so many of the people you guys look up to are rich people. Like, Donald Trump is like one of the richest men on the planet, He's part of a way smaller tax bracket than you and I, I'll tell you that much. Way smaller. There are a few thousand people, maybe, in Trump's tax bracket, compared to mine, which is probably a couple of 100 million, Crazy to think about. Also true. Okay. I have a proposal that can be put up for examination. It's like pineapple on pizza. Not everyone likes it. Okay. Oh boy. It's long. Oh boy. I just want to say to Blueberry X, I think you, like me, are just apt to thinking about it too much, maybe. Because, like, when I call myself a retard, yeah, I mean that I'm being dumb. But when I call somebody else a retard, I really don't mean that as, like, a complete dismissal of that, of their person, right? Now, I guess, like, in a way, maybe I do, but in another way, I don't, right? It's definitely something I will personally pull out for effect more than anything. It's not something I usually choose to levy on somebody super hard or to use a whole lot. I will use it sometimes on bigots. Like, you'll hear me use it, but I'm, cautious about how I use it. And when I use it on myself, I'm more flippant about it because I feel like using it on myself, like, whatever. The only possible victim of that is me. And, if I'm making the choice, then I can't be a victim of it, Yeah, it's like, sure, I'm calling somebody else a retard, and then I'll turn around and call myself a retard, and so it's like, what effect does it have? But that's kind of the point. The more I use it, like, number one, the more I use it for effect, the less effect it's going to have. Eventually, it'll get to the point where if I just keep calling people retarded, people are going to start making it a meme, right? So, one of the things about being somebody that argues with people, for a living, as I do these days, like, I'm super fucking happy to do, you kind of get used to the idea of, at least from what I can tell, coming up with new rhetoric pretty regularly. And in my opinion, it's kind of a fun exercise, honestly. It's like Carlin used to. I watched this really long interview with George Carlin a long time ago, and I've rewatched it a few times. It's 8 hours long, so I don't often rewatch it. But it is good background listening material. He did like an 8-hour long interview with a radio station or something like that towards the end of his life, like basically telling his whole life story, literally from before he was born to present day when he made that interview. And one of the things he talked about is that when he was, I say when he never stopped doing comedy. That's one thing about Carlin is he died working a new special, as far as I know. Not literally in the act of it, I know he died in the hospital, but still, my point remains. He never stopped, so I don't know why I was going to say he used to, but anyway. But when he was alive and when he was doing the HBO circuit, he would come up with the material like immediately after the last show of the special, where it gets recorded and all that, and then for the next 6 months or a year or whatever it is before the next special hits off, he would write the new one and throw the old one out completely. So the content never got reused, or if it did get reused, it got reworked from memory into something new and interesting. He never plagiarized himself. He didn't have really. He managed to figure out a way to have a common thread throughout his comedy without it sounding cliched. Limiting reproduction for those receiving assistance. To avoid creating a situation where individuals exploit the system for personal gain, I propose that individuals receiving government assistance should be limited to having children up to the replacement rate, 2 to 3 children per family. This would ensure the government resources are not stretched beyond the capacity by those. Ooh, I can imagine where this is going. Oh boy. Does anyone else smell fried rice? Anyone else smell fried rice? I just heard a cat. I'm pretty sure it said meow. Who are unable or unwilling to contribute economically. Okay, so, number one. Oh, I've got so many problems with this, Tyler. This was actually a good response. Okay. Oh, thank you for going through the effort, I guess. So this is actually a really fun conversation to have. The number one problem I have with it seems to be the assumption, right, that we should limit it, but not, like, it's kind of interesting to me that the proposal you're submitting is not as extreme as I would have assumed. I would have assumed that you would have went for some kind of policy that just prevents people from having kids at all. That's what I was guessing when I read the first line. But actually, you kind of surprised me. That's not nearly as, you know, uncharitable as I thought it was going to be. And I'm just going to respond to these in chunks. So you can continue to write them, but I'm going to respond to them in chunks. The number one thing I have is it seems to be the assumption that the people that are currently being called welfare queens and shit have more than 3 kids already, or 2 kids, or whatever you ended up settling on, right? The assumption seems to be that every person abusing the welfare system in a way that is lecherous in America is doing so with like 7 kids under their belt. But that's even more rare than the person who's taking advantage of the system, period. Like, I would argue that there are a ton of people, not a ton, but a lot of the people who are abusing the system, I think, are probably childless. Because most of the people who are on the system who have children are spending it on their children. Now, there are definitely some people who are abusing the system, abusing the fuck out of the system, that have kids. And honestly, it's easier to abuse the system if you have kids, not least of all because you will get more assistance on the basis of having those kids, because the idea is that you're supporting yourself and them, and they've got needs, and sometimes those needs are going to exceed even your need, and that's the whole idea behind it. But if you're not actually using that towards your children's care, in my opinion, that's a form of welfare fraud. But my solutions to these things are always different than what a lot of conservatives push out. I think that setting aside the fact that I think most people who are um, doing the kind of thing that you guys are worried about already wouldn't be affected by this change is something worth pointing out. I also want to point out that it's kind of impossible to um, limit how many kids people have. People are gonna fuck, dude. And unless you're gonna like surgically change people at birth or something like that, which is gonna have long-reaching side effects and consequences, and there's gonna be all kinds of people who are just permanently sterile who shouldn't be. All kinds of lawsuits out of that shit. It's not gonna work. Nobody's gonna go for it. Even if it did happen, it would be disastrous. So nobody's gonna go for that. And that's the only way you could actually fucking get in between people and their desire to fuck. The only other way to get in between that is really good sex education, widespread availability and encouragement of birth control, and not demonizing people who want to get abortions. If you've got all that, then you can maintain a healthy birth rate. And at that point, you can incentivize having kids when you need more kids and stop the incentives when there's enough people. Or if you're planning on accepting a bunch of refugees or something, you end the have new kids incentives or whatever. You don't stop providing any of the baseline care, but maybe if you're having like a reduction in population or something like that, hey, you get like $1,000 extra for a year if you have a kid. You get like $1,000 UBI a month if you have a kid. Something like that. I think that a properly functional society would use methods like that, instruments like that, to encourage or discourage um, reproduction in their population. But that's a damned far sight from limiting how many kids people can have. I was never your friend, dude, so I suggest you calm down calling me shit and perhaps... What are you fucking getting into, Vincent? What are you on about? Yeah, there's a whole ass breakup going. Let me see here. Incentivizing personal responsibility and contribution. Individuals who wish to have more children beyond the replacement rate must earn the right to do so by demonstrating their contribution to society. This would mean that they must achieve self-sufficiency, such as creating a business, gaining meaningful employment, or contributing to the economy in a way that enables them to support additional family members. Once a person proves their ability to support a larger family through their work or entrepreneurial efforts, they will be allowed to expand their family beyond limitation. Okay, so let me respond to this one. Fuck, there's a lot in that. That's a lot to respond to. Fuck. So my problem with all that is that the situations that we have right now are what are creating the situation that we're talking about. I don't know how else to put it. Like, if we didn't have such a horribly rigid capitalist system, if we had a wider, broader social safety net, we wouldn't have people trying to game the system by having 7 kids by a bunch of different people and going after some of them for fucking child, or what is it? What is child support? Yeah, going after some of them for child support and going after the state for fucking welfare money and food stamps and fucking HUD and all this shit. You know, like, I'm glad those fucking systems exist, but you realize that it's 2 different pressures coming from the capitalist system that makes this happen. Number one, the pressure to constantly have kids. The pressure to constantly fucking have kids. It is so fetishized in this fucking society. It is deeply fetishized in this society. It's considered as like one of the things that makes you a fully valid adult. You know, everyone kind of looks at you as like a kid or someone who never grew up if you never had kids or if you don't have kids, and it's fucking stupid. And I say that as a person with children, or a child at least, you know. So I say that as someone who does have skin in the game. It's fucking stupid the way we treat people who aren't parents, as if they're like somehow uniquely unqualified at life or whatever. Four, ensuring fair resource distribution. The fundamental goal is to create a system where resources are distributed fairly and not exploited by individuals who rely on public assistance without contributing back to society. This to prevent the wealthy or productive members of society from being unfairly burdened by those who are unwilling to contribute, ensuring a balance where the strong are not penalized and the weak are not able to exploit the system at their expense. Man, that's some weird fucking dynamics that ChatGPT are setting up there. So I feel like the idea in that chunk there is basically that our society is cannibalistically empathetic. That we're so empathetic that it's actually the weak, undeserving people in society that are manipulating everything, and it's all the strong people who should be in charge having to bear the burden. But that's not how strength and weakness works. Like, not in nature. In nature, strength and fitness to survive is dependent on your ability to gain resources. Meaning that, at least according to evolutionary theory, the strong would be the ones that are taking advantage of all those things and basically manipulating the system. They're essentially using the strength of the state as their, personal servant army. But once again, I would argue, number one, this is an extremely fucking overrated problem. People act like it's constantly happening everywhere you look, and the truth of it is that it's pretty fucking rare. And I really don't know that it's something we need to legislate away directly. I don't know that it's something we need to tackle with legislation that is meant to kick people off of welfare or require them to work to get it or whatever. I think the best way to fix a lot of these problems would be to nationalize a few different key areas of human life, like housing, for example, and then to socialize pretty much every human need. Let luxuries and creature comforts be up to the marketplace. I'm fine with that. If I died in a system that was like that, I would consider that a life well lived. You know, if I manage to live to 85 years old, and when I pass away, I can look around at a world where, sure, you still have to work and save and all that for a PS5 or something like that, or a PS 2017 or whatever the fuck it is, you know, in whatever year that'll be. Sure, you still have to save up to get your hologram simulator fucking Holodeck 5000, but you don't have to worry about rent coming out of your paycheck. You don't have to worry about any of that shit. Because your taxes, I mean, you're still getting some taken out. Of course, you're contributing back to the broader whole of society as well, but the brunt of the tax burden is being borne by the corporations that would still continue to be making the most money out of anybody. Let's see. So, 5. Social mobility and incentives for advancement. The system would not only incentivize responsible reproduction, but also encourage social mobility and economic advancement. Those who are currently dependent on government assistance would have the opportunity to break free from the system, demonstrating their ability to contribute to the ensures that work hard, innovate, and strive for. Those who choose to remain dependent on the system have a clear limited potential for growth. That's just how it is already, Tyler. Oh, dear God. Oh my God, Tyler. There are too many of these, bud. Man, you gonna put me to sleep. Shit, dog. Yeah, I don't know that I can fucking... I can't read another paragraph just yet. I leaned up real close to try, and my fucking eyes got dizzy. I'm just gonna have to cover them for a second. This green is fucking with me. Look at the fire for a minute. Anyway, that fifth point or whatever it was, that's already how things are. That's already how things are. So, like, in our current society, if you choose to just be a welfare leech, which, like I said, is pretty fucking difficult to do, given how hard our society makes it just to get on those programs if you need them, let alone if you're just trying to game the system. If you choose to do that, you are permanently limiting yourself. Um, you're permanently limiting your ability to advance in society. You're permanently limiting your ability to do better things if you make that choice. So that's what already exists. I mean, that's already the system that's in place. The welfare system, no matter how much you're taking advantage of it, is not going to provide enough for somebody to be living it up, basically. And yes, I know, you've seen somebody pay for EBT stuff and then get in a Cadillac. Have you ever heard of somebody getting a ride? Everybody's got a story like that, and I'm unimpressed with all of them because I think pretty much all of them come down to the simple fact that people got to get rides when they're broke as shit and don't have their own car. Probably getting in the driver's seat because their mom or whatever, whoever owns the car, is too old to even drive anymore. But she still comes with because it's her baby. It's one thing I do not look forward to is eventually getting too old to effectively drive. I gotta be honest, I hope they create life-extending technology and that it gets made available to the people before I get too old. I genuinely do. I've kind of gotten to a point in my life where I kind of love life, and I would be okay with living like another, you know. I feel like I would love to live another 100 years before having to worry about the downslope. Man, I just want to see how shit plays out, dog. I really do. It might get tiring after a while. Hell, who knows? I might eventually long for the long green mile. But damn. 85 years just doesn't feel like that much time. Not when you think about how much shit there is on this planet. Not when you think about how much of a human being's life is just wasted on endless work, especially here in America. Endless overproductive work. We drive people harder here than any other country does. Yeah, it's just the chat on the internet, bro. Nothing to trip about. Let us be lovers who marry our fortunes together. I've got some real estate here in my bag. So we bought a pack of cigarettes. And Mrs. Wagner's paradise. And walked off to look for America. Jackie, I said we voted Pittsburgh. Michigan seems like a dream to now. Laughing on the bus, playing games with faces. She said the man in the cavity suit was a spy. I said be careful, his bow tie's really a camera. Toss me a cigarette, I think there's one in my raincoat. Sorry, y'all. Okay. I'll put it in the conclusion. This proposal aims to create a more fair and sustainable system where resources are used efficiently and individuals are incentivized to contribute to society through meaningful work, recognizes the importance of providing a safety net for those in need while also ensuring that the system does not become an excuse for irresponsibility or exploitation. The goal is to ensure that productive individuals are not penalized for their success and that everyone is encouraged to contribute to the prosperity of our nation. So I take a few issues with the things that were presented in that proposal. Number one seems to be that it's all predicated on the idea that rich people are inherently productive. that if the reason why you don't do any work is because your way of earning income is by sitting around being rich, that you're just as good as somebody who's actually working. I think that that is kind of a slipped premise, maybe. It's one of those things that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. If you can recognize that um, somebody who sucks up welfare money that they don't actually need is a leech, surely you can recognize how a billionaire is a leech for very much similar reasons, right? Doesn't that track? Because that tracks with me, right? I get it, right? I get that there are some people who take advantage of the current welfare situation because it's predicated on something it shouldn't be predicated on. It's made in a way that makes it able to be, you know, to have fraud committed against it and shit. It's done in a way that makes it easier to scam it. If it was completely universal, if these help programs were completely universal, there'd be no way to fraudulently scam by misrepresenting yourself because it would just be universal based on the area you live in. If you live in LA, you're getting like $800 a month for you to spend on food. You know, if it's you plus a child, then it's like an additional $500 a month or an additional $400 a month or something like that. Some kind of universal basic income that can be spent on whatever you need. That should probably also range. But one thing I'm big about is that I think that before America implements a UBI, we need to implement fucking federal price controls on rent. Federal. That was a weird noise. Anyway. But yeah, we need to implement federal level um, uh, price controls. That way, landlords can't just suck up all that extra dough. And I think that probably in a few human necessity kind of areas, that needs to be done concurrently with that. And that needs to happen before the UBI can go into place. So the safety net would allow workers to peacefully protest wages without going homeless. I mean, I would hope so. I don't think we have a safety net like that yet. That's the thing, Tyler, is that, I'm not saying you necessarily argued for this, but it kind of seems like you are. It seems like you're arguing from the standpoint of like, we need to reduce these social safety net things, or we need to be more careful about them, or something like that. And I'm of the opinion that we don't have nearly enough. We don't have nearly enough. Like, most people who go on strike are not going to, like, you might be able to get unemployment in certain jurisdictions, you know? You might have access to a strike fund if you're in a big enough union. But likely, all that's not going to be enough regardless, and you're going to have to go work somewhere else when you're not standing in the line for your main job. I think that a social safety net like the one I'm proposing, that is universal, covers everybody, work, no work, kids, no kids. You get a little bit extra based on your kids so you can take care of them, but it's not, you know, some giant incentive. But I also think that there needs to be a lot more like responsibility placed on people for having kids. I'm not a big fan of the idea that people just need to go around willy nilly having kids fucking all the time, and with no critical thinking behind it beforehand. Obviously I think people should be intelligent about it, but I think people are capable of doing that. I think people do it more often in societies that make sense. Musk supports UBI. My thought is that if they do not implement UBI, then things will get bad, especially with AI. Oh yeah, Musk supports UBI because, for all of his flaws, he probably realizes the same thing me and you do, which is that consumerism and his business model and everything else, they are all of them predicated on people having enough money to spend to buy their shit. And people are about to have way less money to spend, no matter where you look. No matter where you look. Literally, pretty much every fucking CEO involved with AI, pretty much every CEO of any front-facing corporation, a bunch of people in the military, every fucking institution in the country is screaming out that AI is about to start replacing jobs en masse. And it already is, it's underway. And people just don't see it. People don't see it, and that's why they don't realize it. But when you search now on Google, a lot of times the first thing you'll see is an AI write-up. If it's something that the AI can do a write-up about, it will. And it'll give you little options and shit to click for sources, etc., etc. But yeah, Taco Bell was just testing out, I think it was Taco Bell, I can't remember if it was Taco Bell or McDonald's, or maybe both of them, testing out a new AI drive-thru, one that won't even need human beings except at the window. And we're less than 5 years away from having that kind of technology just natively available. Sorry. What I was going to say is that we are 5 years away, in my opinion, from having technology that will allow us to make very little human intervention fast food restaurants. They're going to have to figure out some way to allow people to pay that is convenient. So that's probably going to mean some kind of, I don't know, it's probably going to mean some kind of ATM-like function or something, where you're actually encouraged to pull away a little bit, and you can get your door open and get out, and then you do the little transaction there. Or maybe it'll be something that, it might be something that's mounted on some kind of rail outside and just varies its height to wherever it detects your eye level is. And if you have any cash, you give it to it in its little mouth, and then it holds onto it in a specific way that allows the next part of the process to take hold of it. And then whenever you finish with the transaction, you've given it all of your change, you've given it your dollar bill, it goes back into place, deposits the $20 that you just gave it and the 75 cents, make change, spits that back out at you in the same drawer that your order pops out in. There will be fully autonomous restaurants within my lifetime, and that's sad to me. I'm not even going to lie. It is sad to me how much people are going to give up. Now, I maintain some hope. I don't think everybody's going to. I think that there's going to be a lot of holdouts when it comes to small businesses, especially small restaurants, because I think that I'm not the only person out there, or out here, or whatever. You want to, however you want to look at it. I'm not the only person out here that thinks that um, that AI is not going to be able to cook a meal as good as a human being can. And then even if it can, it's going to feel weird and cold and calculated. And just, I don't know. The very idea of it is unpalatable to me. you go over your reproductive limit, you lose UBI. So what's your proposal to do with the children then, Tyler? See, here's another problem I have with this, and it's something I didn't get into. But what about the fact that it's fucking capitalism itself that demands people constantly have more kids? Like, you realize that, like, I just feel like you're not accounting for the fact that this society literally encourages people to have kids. Are you saying that we should change that? If so, then maybe we agree on that. Because, like, yeah, I think we need to get over this idea that everybody should just have infinite kids, because that also plays into people doing this shit that you're worried about. It's not just people being like, ooh, America, one of the fucking hardest countries to access their welfare state ever. I'm gonna abuse their taxpayers. It's like, that's not how it fucking happens. Anyway, I gotta go. I'm so fucking sleepy. I'm real tired and my eyes are starting to hurt. But thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you guys for super chatting. You guys got us $27 a night, which is super fucking chill, and I appreciate it. I will talk to you guys later. Thank you guys for hanging out, as always. Peace.